You're listening to Boobies and Noobies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Welcome to Boobies and Noobies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today we are kicking off our month-long celebration of lights, camera, and action in a series I'm calling Hot for Hollywood. And I'm pleased to say that we could not have chosen a better book to start our September series. Joining me today is Mel Gill, founder of Steamy Lit, whose mission is to provide women romance authors of color and non-binary genderqueer authors a platform to amplify their voices through their work while also empowering discourse around sexuality. Please join me in welcoming Mel.
Hi, Kelly. I'm so happy to be here. This is so exciting. Just listening to your intro, I was trying not to chuckle.
It's that dick in a box bit, right?
It's 100% the dick in the box.
I don't know where that came from. Like when I first started the podcast, I just knew that I've always been a big fan of Saturday Night Live. I absolutely love the video sketch of Dick in a Box. And I don't know how it wormed its way into my brain when I decided to start a podcast, but it did. And I'm glad it did because I get to say that every week and it works out for me.
It's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Mel, where are you joining me from? I want to say you're also a West Coast based person, yes?
I am. I'm in San Diego.
Delightful.
Where are you at?
I'm in Portland, Oregon, but I was
nice.
based in the Los Angeles area for like 5 years.
Very cool.
Yeah, San Diego is a gem. Like you don't realize like if you're in the LA area how close it is, but it's like another world.
Yeah. I what I love about San Diego, especially growing up in Miami, is that it's like I had to leave Miami because it was too fast paced, but I feel like San Diego is just my vibe. Like you get the beach, you get the city, but then it's also very chill. And I love that.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who have been in like the Los Angeles area because I moved there to do filmmaking, which is why I probably love this book so much. And but a lot of them who would leave because they just got tired of like the hustle and bustle, they would go to San Diego because they're like, it's still a city. There's still plenty of things to do, but I'm also by the beach and it's a lot more chill. Like I just have to get used to people driving at a slower pace and not honking at each other.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, there you go. San Diego should pay us for endorsing their city, but I'm just saying. So tell everybody about Steamy Lit because I, for one, was very excited when you launched this company.
Sure. So Steamy Lit is home of the Steam Box. I am hoping that Steamy Lit will open our doors, our e-doors, I guess I should say, to be a romance bookstore as well. I've kind of been dabbling a little bit in it already, but right now my focus is on the Steam Box because my husband's in the military. Opening an actual bookstore would be hard just because we don't know where we're going to be in a year, but I'm kind of toying around with the idea of being like a pop-up bookstore, so like maybe going to like a community event or like different things like that, while also keeping my online presence. But the Steam Box is a romance book subscription box. It's a quarterly box, and my aim is to amplify the work of women of color who write romance, as well as authors who are in any kind of marginalized community or have any kind of marginalized identity, because I feel like we don't read enough of that, right? Like I just kind of went on this rant about like I love what Booktok is doing right now, highlighting indie authors, but all of those authors are white, right? Like I'm not seeing like the diversity, and I'm just tired of screaming that we need to read diverse romance. It's beautiful. We have authors who are just amazing, and so when I really started like heavily reading romance was last year during the pandemic, and my husband was deployed. And so it was kind of my way of trying to stay sane while being at home with just my dogs. And something that I realized was that it was so hard for me to find folks who look like me in in book covers to just like what the book was about, or even my husband, right? And so that was kind of the driving force. And then I kind of realized that within the book community, we weren't like, now I feel like we're talking a lot about it, and I think a lot of it has to do with Booktok, but I don't think at that point we were talking about how romance books made us feel, right? And so like we weren't talking about pleasure, we weren't talking about being turned on by these books, and I was like, is there something wrong with me? Like, am I the only one that's horny after reading this scene? Like, why?
Hell no.
Right. And so, like, why are we not talking about it? And so I was kind of toying with the idea of like, hey, someone should really make a book subscription box that like pairs the book with a toy, right? And my friend was like, do it. And I was like, do it. And then like that kind of evolved into making it a whole experience, right? And so like everything about self-love and self-pleasure that I can put in a box is kind of what I'm trying to provide. And for me, it's like emphasis on self-love and what that looks like for you. And I think it's different for every single person, right?
Yeah.
Like while I am totally okay talking about like a horny scene and how that made me feel, like it might not be for you. And that's totally fine. Like as long as you're embracing your sexuality and loving yourself, like that's ideally what I want every time I send this box out. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We're at the end of our summer vibes theme box, and we're merging into our fall theme box, which will be a full Latinx romance box. Yeah, I'm very excited.
I'm excited too. And I mean, I know what you mentioned when it comes to like Booktok, how we're seeing like predominantly like white authors promoting their books. And on the one hand, I'm like, I'm so excited that there's another outlet for people to just promote romance in general. But I'm totally with you in that I feel like it's still a very skewed look at like what romance is, which I'm like, great, indie romance, awesome. Like this is opening up readers who are only familiar with like traditionally published romance to a whole new market. But within that market is so much more, including fabulous authors like Kennedy Ryan, who we're going to be talking about today. But I just want to see more diversity out there. And so I love that Steamy Lit is doing something. Like obviously you can't, conquer the world with this one box, but it's what can you do? And it's something for like everybody to think about. Just like, well, what can I do? Like maybe there's a reason that every month I try to pick at least 1 or 2 books by authors of color for the podcast to read, because I want to make sure that I'm doing what I can do out there as a cishet white woman. So everybody has something that they can do. And whether it's just diversifying what you're reading or, trying something new by an author that maybe you're not familiar with. Maybe we're talking about Kennedy Ryan today. Maybe this is your first Kennedy Ryan book. That's great. But see what else Kennedy Ryan reads or writes or reads right. too. I'm sure Kennedy will promote whatever she's reading as well. So, but Steamy Lit, I think, is a great way to introduce yourself to more marginalized authors.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, even like a year ago, right? Like I would go into Barnes & Noble and like there wasn't any books by indie authors. Like, and now right. I'm walking in and there's like a whole Booktok table that's full of indie authors. So again, like when romance is trending and we are breaking the stigma that like it's our guilty pleasure. Like I hate that. Like why does it have to be a guilty pleasure? Like it's just a pleasure, right? And so like every time that we're talking about romance and it's trending and we're breaking that stigma and we're saying like this is what we love to read, right? Mm-hmm. I love it, but right, like there is more than what is just trending on Booktok, and right. And my hope is that, I mean, obviously we started this before like all the Booktok craziness, but my hope is that with the box, like we can help break that a little bit at a time and just show stories and experiences that are different from our own, and just open yourself up to that,
For anybody who's thinking, well, I can't read a Black romance, or I can't read a romance about 2 queer women, like, because that's not me. It's a love story. It is a fucking love story. Like, people are falling in love. Love is the most universal theme there is. You absolutely can connect to 100%. It. So don't use that as your excuse to not dive in and and, lose an opportunity to read an incredible book.
Right. I feel like if those are your thoughts, and I recognize that there is a lot of people who are being challenged in a way to break their own biases and like stigmas that they've grown up around. And my recommendation would be, if that is your initial thought or reaction when you are seeing a book that's different from how you identify, sit with that for a minute and think about why that is, right? And really try to like examine and think about and unpack why you're coming up against these feelings. And I think that once you sit down and realize that what that means for you, I think that you're going to open up your world to a whole new bookshelf and opportunities of just books and authors that are wonderful, that you've been holding back on just because you think you can't relate.
No, I agree. I mean, I feel like in 2020, when everybody was, at home and did a lot more reading than maybe some people were used to. I found myself unpacking things within myself while reading, because I realized that I was being so much more judgmental towards female characters than I was male characters, which I think is very common for female readers in general. And that's because we live in a society where we've very much been trained to believe that we're in competition with each other 24/7. And so it's something, though, that when you do check yourself and you think about, like, okay, do I genuinely dislike this character? Do I genuinely not know how to connect with this person? Or is there something else that's like, why? Like, what is the why behind that? And then once you think about it a little bit more, and I think people are scared to do the thinking, but it's worth it. Like, if you want to recognize something and grow and learn, and we're always evolving as human beings. Like, we're not done. We're not perfect. So we never will be. So, I mean, I do genuinely encourage everyone to just sort of like think about why they might be feeling things like that. Because I know, personally speaking, when I do that, it does make me feel better in the long run to understand where those thoughts are coming from.
Yeah, same thing. And I mean, kind of what you were saying to your point of like just women, like how we judge women a little bit harshly. Like, I remember being in a book club conversation about The Right Swipe, I think it is.
Okay.
And I remember folks talking about like the character being too much, right? And like, I personally didn't feel that way because I related to the character so much. And then it like made me think like, okay, but why, right? And so definitely, I think, but I've done it, like not in that instance, but I've done it in other books. And I think as I was able to unpack that and kind of realize, like, why am I holding the woman accountable for things that I'm not holding the like male protagonist accountable for? It really like made me enjoy my reading experience a lot more, because now I wasn't like, I had already unpacked that. So definitely, I think we can all learn, we can all grow daily. And I think it's so amazing when we are challenged with something that makes us stop and think about like our biases and things that we're trying to unlearn.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and thank you for, I think it's amazing you've created a business and a box that I am lucky to have in my living room that I think will help people do that and also enjoy some sexy times, whether it's by themselves, with a partner, partners, who cares, whatever you're up to. That's awesome. Well, where can everybody find, subscribe, shop, buy all the awesome swag and merch that Steamy Lit has been producing?
Sure. We are at steamylit.com or the Steambox Co. on Instagram. And Twitter, I think we're just the Steambox, the same as TikTok. Yeah, that's kind of where you can find us. Steamylit.com is where you'll be able to purchase everything and all of the things.
Nice. Well, and I will tell everybody that I'm so excited to be a Steamy rep for the fall winter season. And so if you'd like to get in on the hot, sexy fun, you can find a link in my bio on Instagram for a discount off your first purchase. So get in there, get it while it's hot. Well, I'm excited to talk about this book today because this was a book that I received a copy of in my Steambox, so it seemed only appropriate that this should be the one we discuss, especially since it fits in perfectly with the theme of Hot for Hollywood, and that is Reel, Reel, just so everybody Everybody's Clear by Kennedy Ryan. And this contemporary romance, which packs in some of my favorite tropes, including forbidden workplace romance and grumpy hero, sunshine heroine, was published just this year, June 2021. It's also available for free with Kindle Unlimited, which kind of surprised me because this is like a hefty book. So that's a deal for sure. And I will mention that this is also the first book in Kennedy Ryan's Hollywood Renaissance series. And if you read it, you will absolutely understand what she's setting up for future books, because I'm already seeing at least one more romance, if not two more. And having read this, oh my God, I need it now. I need it. I need it in my life. So let me give everyone the synopsis for this book, and then we will dive in to our discussion. So this is straight from goodreads.com, Real by Kennedy Ryan. One moment in the spotlight. For months, I stood by, an understudy waiting in the wings, preparing for my time to shine. I never imagined he would watch in the audience that night. Canon Holt, which, can I pause? Like, how sexy is and like masculine is that name? Canon Holt.
Super sexy.
He sounds like he's like a brand of, I mean, he is like a brand of a gun. There's cannons, and then isn't like a Holt, or is it a Colt that's a gun? I think
it's a Colt.
Okay. He definitely sounds like a brand of weaponry. Canon Holt. Famous film director, fascinating, talented, fine. Before I could catch my breath, everything changed. I went from backstage Broadway to center stage Hollywood, from being unknown to my name, Neevah Saint, on everyone's lips. Canon cast me in a star-studded Harlem Renaissance biopic, catapulting me into another stratosphere. But stars shine brightest in the dead of night. Forbidden attraction, scandal, and circumstances beyond my control jeopardize my dream. Could this one shot, the role of a lifetime, the love of a lifetime, cost me everything? I love how, like, that really does give us a setup, but it's also very vague. Like, there's no, like, major details being given away in the synopsis, which I personally prefer. I like not knowing what is going to happen, like, step by step. So I'm a fan of that synopsis.
I'm the same way. I actually go into books most of the time not even like reading. Mm-hmm. Like I might know like the trope maybe, but that's it. Like I just like to be surprised. And I mean, even just hearing you read the synopsis, I have chills because this book is just that amazing.
It's so good. I read this whole thing in one sitting, and it wasn't even meant to be. It was like okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to, it's over 400 pages. So I'm like, I'm going to sit down, read maybe like 100 or so, take a little break, come back. And then I was all of a sudden on like page 200. And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, we'll just do like 50 more pages. Like we're at like a crucial moment. Like we'll keep going. And then it's like 300 pages. Well, okay, I've made it this far, so I might as well just like keep on rolling with it. And oh my God, yeah, it was an afternoon read, and I read the whole thing, and I have zero regrets about that.
Yeah, I think I also read it in like one sitting, and it was like into the night, like fell asleep for a couple hours and then woke up and like finished reading it. And I mean, this is how I am with all Kennedy Ryan books. She is like an absolute favorite of mine. So
yes,
like even like when I found out about this book, I was like, well, I need to pick the perfect time when I know like I don't have to do anything, because I know I will not stop reading, because her writing is just that like engaging. It's so beautiful. It's just captivating. Like you just can't put it down. And I felt like as I was reading this, I felt that like I could picture a movie. Like
yes.
It was like a movie in my head. It wasn't even like, usually I can picture like characters or like scenes, but this played out literally like a movie reel. Like it was perfect.
Well, okay, and so let's talk about like the movie making aspect of it too, because obviously this is a book that's about people making a movie. So like I'm picturing like if it was a movie, like we were watching the film version of Real, which by the way should absolutely be a movie. Like, are you listening, Netflix? Like please make this a movie. So it would be like a movie within a movie at that point. But I worked for 5 years in Hollywood, and I can honestly say that this is the most idealized version of a Hollywood set I've ever read, because let me tell you about Canon Holt and the master director. This man he has daycare on set. He has a therapist on set, on standby for the performers. What were the other things? There were like 4 or 5 things I wrote down where I was like, oh my gosh, I wish they have shorter hours for filming.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they're still filming like 10-hour days, but in Hollywood, that's nothing. So, oh my God, I was perplexed. I was like, I wish this is what, like, the experience that I've had and friends have had who have worked in Hollywood. I wish this was the experience we had, because, oh, the other thing is that he surrounds himself with female crew. Like he has his go-to writer who's a woman. He has his go-to camera cinematographer who's a woman. Not a lot of female cinematographers that you hear about too in mainstream movies. So this was the version of Hollywood that I wish was real. I wish that, like, I'm manifesting this into like existence. Like, I hope this is like what every set will look like and should look like. It has not been my experience with Hollywood, but God, it would be great if it was real.
I agree. I don't know much about Hollywood, but it definitely felt like there were parts of the book that Kennedy really took time in, like, developing to really include like different experiences and how he handles those different experiences, like with childcare and different things like that. I thought was really cool because I've never read anything like that.
It's a lot of detail. Like I would guess that Kennedy consulted with somebody in like the Hollywood world about this, because like they really do talk a lot about like the pre-production side of like, oh, we have to get, you know, this person on board. We have to go to the studio and get their approval. Like I've been watching on Netflix that series they're doing called how movies are made, or like it's something about behind the scenes of like favorite movies. So like I watched one the other day about Dirty Dancing, and like the amount of work that goes into like just getting everyone to sign off on everything is incredible. I mean, he's working on this project for over a year before they even pick up a camera. So it just goes to show you like the dedication this guy has, and like he would be an incredible director to work with. Like, oh my God, it would just be incredible. And then the movie itself that they're making, it sounds fantastic. Like I would go watch this movie about Desi Blue, which I was like, I read in the back. I don't know, did you do this where I immediately Googled Desi Blue to see if this was a real person? Sadly, she's not.
Yeah, I think Desi is just a combination of just different artists in that era. But I would have loved, and I don't know if Kennedy has this on her radar, but I would have loved for there to be a novella on just like Desi Blue and that romance. I would have loved to just read more. And I think that that's what was like so amazing. It was like a book within a book.
Yes.
And there was like, even that was so powerful, right?
Yeah.
That I was blown away. I don't know how she does it. And I mean, like, her writing, the way she was able to incorporate both of those and having like different timelines, and how how the book within the book is like so well incorporated into like the plot was just fantastic.
Yeah, there's a lot of thought. I want to read everybody just like this brief section from the author's note at the end of the book, and this is where Kennedy Ryan just sort of talks about like the inspiration and the fact that Desi Blue isn't a real woman, but that she's kind of like a combination of several real life inspirations. So from Kennedy Ryan, she says, "Real is a work of fiction, but it's inspired by the energy and excellence of countless Black creatives from the past and present. Desi Blue is a composite of the amazing women I encountered during my research for this book. Her recipe for greatness is a dash of Billie Holiday, some Ella Fitzgerald, sprinkled in, and a heaping scoop of Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith. So this really is, I mean, this is a love letter to Black artists, like both of the past and the present. And I mean, mission accomplished, like well done. This whole book. And like you mentioned with sort of how the scenes, the book within the book, there's like a lot of thought put into like the certain scenes we see. We actually get to see like pages of the screenplay that they're working on for the movie in the book. And I think it's easy for somebody to think, oh, well, I can just skip by this because like this isn't real. Like I'm reading, you know, the story about Neevah and Canon, but no, read those scenes because everything is chosen so meticulously. Like every single piece of this book is there for a reason. There's nothing that I would cut out. Like honestly, it all flows together so well.
Yeah, I agree. There's some books that sometimes there'll be like lyrics or something where like I'll kind of just skim through it.
Right.
I mean, you cannot do that with this. I mean, if you read her other series, Grip, you also cannot do that with the Grip series because the lyrics are just such an important, like you have to be in it. Like she's just a phenomenal writer.
One of the things I really liked about this book was, well, and I love this about Kennedy's books in general, is I feel like she challenges your way of thinking when you're reading a book. Like there's a couple instances where she could very much like villainize a few of the characters, both of whom are women. We have Canon's ex, Camille, who he had a poor experience with. They fell in love-ish on a movie set, and she had him fired when things didn't work out. But she kind of gets her own, they get their moment of closure. They get to say they're sorry to each other and move on. And I was like, wow, that's a moment I didn't necessarily expect to have, but now that I've had it, I do feel better. And then the whole other story is the one with Neevah's sister, where very early on in the book, in the very beginning, we get a peek at to who they were when they were teenagers. And Neevah, before she decided to move to New York to pursue acting, was planning to stay in North Carolina, marry her high school sweetheart, but finds out that he's been cheating on her with her sister and that her sister is pregnant as a result of their affair, which at the time I was like, sweet Jesus, like I can't with these. I personally, I'm like, I would never be able to forgive this woman. I would never be able to forgive this woman. But somehow by the end of the book, you're like, oh, I guess it's okay.
Yeah, I will say I was not expecting that at all when I first opened the book, because like you read about that really early on, and I was like, what the fuck did I just read? And like I was ready to fight somebody for Neevah. And then, I mean, even towards the end of the book, like even though there was like closure and like their like relationship, you know, they were somewhat working on mending it or whatever, like I still could not, because like I just could not understand how good for Neevah, like good for Neevah, because I feel like she needed that, and like her and her sister were close and whatever, but whew, yeah, I could never.
Because they still have so much like, I don't want to say hatred, but like animosity towards each other. And really it's like deep-rooted jealousy, you know, from each side. So I do appreciate the way that Kennedy kind of shows that, you know, we only know one side of the story. We know Neevah's point of view, like, and we never get to necessarily see inside her sister's point of view. But the way that her sister describes it to us, we're like, oh, okay, like, all right, I can understand that you felt like, you know, you wanted this one guy who didn't want you. He wanted your sister. Like, that's a low blow. I get it. But the part that made it, at least for me, palatable to like be able to like let it go in the end was that you actually do get to see this ex-boyfriend, Brandon, I think.
I think so.
Neevah actually looks at him and she's like, I can see that he loves my sister. Like, I can see the love in his eyes as he's like looking at my sister. He's worried about her as she's going into surgery. Like, so I know that he loves her. It's not like it's not like they're still together out of spite or like they're just staying together for their child together. Like they are in love. And I was like, okay, this is okay. Like I, at least knowing that, if it's so bad to say, but it's like, if you're gonna cheat, you better make it work. Like you better stay together and like make this shit work. So
I mean, especially because it ruined so much dynamic between like the families, between, you know, like Neevah. Like I think a lot of it too was just like the dynamic between her mom and her, and that was really like painful to read too, because it was like, to a point where like Neevah felt like she just needed to do everything on her own, because like her sister always needed her mom, and like they could not split mom apart between the two. There were so many parts of the book that were just like breathtaking and that will make you cry and will challenge the way you think, but will also have you like swooning. Like I don't understand how so much can make you feel so many different feelings in a book.
No, that's exactly it. I am not like an emotional reader. Like I usually, when I read, I'm like, haha, or like, aw, you know, I mean, this was one where I genuinely was like worked up multiple times, like, because there's so much, like, you fall in love with these characters and you want them to have a happy ending. Like, and there are points where that is challenged, not because of like the relationship, because Neevah and Canon's relationship just gets stronger and stronger, like, as the story goes on. But we have to talk about the fact that Neevah also has a chronic illness that she lives with that at first glance doesn't seem to be as problematic. Like, I really appreciate the way that it's set up in the beginning, where she's like, yeah, I take care of myself. You know, like she has a version of lupus. I forget, discoid lupus, I think is what it's called. I think so. Where it's not like a life-threatening lupus. And this is important too, because her aunt died of lupus, but she had the more severe version of it. And so she takes her vitamins, and she's taking like, you know, supplements that the doctor's recommending to her, and she's doing her stretching, and she's doing everything that she should be doing to take care of herself. And yet halfway through, maybe a little bit more than halfway through, as she and Canon are really getting together, she finds out that she's sicker than expected, to the point of potentially needing a new kidney, which, I mean, that's a lot for anyone to handle, let alone somebody in the very beginning stages of a relationship. Like, oh my God.
And not only her relationship, but just like her career taking off. Yes. Right? Because this was like that one opportunity that like was there, like, talk about being at the right time at the right place. Like,
right.
When she got to step in for the person that she was like, what's it called?
She was understudying.
She was understudying. Yeah. Like, and Canon happened to be there, and like everything just worked in her favor to give her this spotlight. This movie will take her career to the next level. So like, to not only like the beginning stages of her relationship, but really the start of her career. Like, there was, I feel like, as anybody who is very like passionate about their career and have needed that like moment to like take their career off, right? I think they'll really resonate with this part of the storyline, because it was so like you felt the anxiety and like, what do you do, right? Like, you need to take care of your health, and I think that's like a great reminder for everybody, right? Like, without your health, you have nothing.
Yeah.
And you felt this constant struggle with Neevah. Like, she knew she needed to prioritize her health, but like, what was she supposed to do about this once in a lifetime chance? And it was like, you could just feel all the anxiety and all the feelings as like she's trying to like balance both of those.
Yeah, because this is another thing I think we've been fed very regularly in society today, is like, oh, self-care, take care of yourself. That's great, you know, but at what cost? Like, you have to give something up in order to take care of yourself. Like, for Neevah, it's, oh, well, if you're taking care of yourself and getting better, that means you're halting production on this movie. You're putting everybody out of work. You're risking your future. You're risking your future with Canon. You're risking your future as a movie star. Like, I mean, there's so much that's just sort of like, you can't have it all. You can't be, you can't take the time for yourself and also have this career or, perfect person in your life. Like, and so because of that, she feels like she's always letting somebody down. Like, I can't take care of myself because then I'm going to be late to set. I can't go to the doctor because I'm going to miss a rehearsal. Like, it makes me so upset, but it makes me so upset because it's so real. Like, it's so real when it's like, I've worked for companies like this where they encourage you to like take your days off. But then when you take your days off, you come back and you're like in trouble for missing something that happened when you were gone. Like, it's unavoidable, which is so upsetting. But thankfully, because we have a hero like Canon, who is her director, he is more than encouraging about her taking care of herself first and foremost, which is delightful.
Yeah, I think him being an advocate for her, I think was so great to see, but also like I think it made you realize that like that on its own is a privilege, because like will you have people like that in your regular like workplace, right? Obviously there's a work of fiction, and like ideally this is like what we would want people to do for us, but like do people have this champion for them in the workplace that will say like absolutely not, like this person needs to take care of themselves first so they can be here and they can continue shooting or whatever it is right, that we're doing for work. And I mean, I think that like I think another thing that kind of was brought up with that was like, well, if he wasn't in love with her, like, would he be still advocating and championing for her the way that he was? Because he was writing so hard for her. And I think that the like Canning that we saw would, because I think you saw how he treated like other folks that he worked with. But that also challenged your way of thinking, because obviously you want to think that of Cannon because like he's just like such a lovely fictional man. But I think it's important to also challenge that like perhaps like he is more biased because obviously he's in love with her, right? So yeah,
I think also too, beyond his love for her and like he clearly has a very high respect of the women that he works with, and I think it all goes back to his mom. Like at the very beginning we see like 20-year-old Cannon who basically got his claim to fame by being a documentary filmmaker, filming this story about his mom who while she's dying of, I think it was MS, and she, is encouraging him to do his art and to always stay true to himself. And I think this very easily could have been one of those stories where when he finds out that Neevah's sicker than expected, he could have used that as an excuse to like run and hide. Like, I can't deal with this again. I've already watched one woman I love die. But Kennedy Ryan takes it the opposite direction of, you know what? I stood by my mom. I can do it again. It's going to be hard, but I will do it again. And so from the moment I read that line, I was like, oh, thank God, because I was not prepared to deal with a man running away from a woman because she was ill. Like that was not going to fly for me. So I'm so glad that is not where this book went, because from there on out, he is her champion. Like he wants to be involved in every doctor's appointment. My favorite scenes are like when they're still having sex, despite the fact that like maybe some of her hair's falling out or she's got these rashes all over her body. And he's like, you think I'm not hard for you just because of this? Like, come on. Like, and those were some of my favorite moments, especially too, because we don't see a lot of characters who are chronically ill in romance, let alone see them as like sexual creatures in media in general. So I loved that we got to see that, because chronically ill people have sex, fat people have sex, Black people. I mean, it's just like we all are. I don't want to say we all have sex because not everybody does have sex, but it's something where there's no reason to like desexualize somebody because of something that they're going through. So I love that he still always saw her as like a sexual creature as well.
Yeah, I loved his devotion to her through like her flare-ups, and through her treatment. And I think for Neevah, it was hard to accept that because she didn't want
Yeah.
to be just like another person that he's like taking care of.
A charity case. Nobody wants to be
Right,
somebody that's
right,
like
right.
that. Yeah.
And I think it took her a minute to like really realize that like he's in this for the long run, and like he was so devoted to her and making her feel good, whether that was like running her a bath or like pleasing her, right? Yeah, I love seeing that too. And to your point, I think what was special, kind of like you say, right, like we desexualize. I think that this kind of breaks that like bias that we have, like especially if we're only reading like white cis het romance, right? Like this is breaking that, like more than just those people have sex. Like
right.
And it was lovely to see. We definitely don't read enough romance about folks with any kind of chronic illness or disability.
Exactly.
And it was lovely to just go through that journey with them.
Yeah, I agree. Oh boy. I fell for Canon hard. Like from the very beginning. First of all, I love a good grumpy hero. Like I am here for the grumpy hero vibes all day, every day. But to me, I'm like, he's not even that grumpy. He's just like getting his job done. Like he's so focused on the job that it takes, I mean, from the very beginning, he says that like storytelling is everything. Like this is what will be first and foremost. And it's not until he meets Neevah and they fall in love that at some point he tells her like, no, you matter the most. Like this is way more important than anything else that we could be doing. So I loved him from the very beginning, and he just got hotter and hotter as the story went on. So I stan Canon for forever. I will say, and I'm excited to see what comes next in this series, because I feel like we know for sure that there has to be this like second chance enemies to lovers romance between what are their names? Verity and Monk. And Monk is the musician, the one who scores the film, and Verity is the screenwriter. And we know that they have some sort of past. And I'm like, yes, I want it. I want it all. And then the one that I'm wondering about is, do you think there'll be another book between the studio executive's wife, who's the costumer, and Evan,
Yes.
his partner? Yes. Yeah, okay. Because I was like, this studio guy's got to go. He sucks.
I think so. I definitely think book 2, I think she's already announced it. I think it's Monk's story.
Yes.
And so I would love to see. And I think there's a novella coming out.
I saw that in September.
Yeah. Soon. Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely something there with like his partner and the studio's like wife or whatever that he ends up. I think at the end they end up not being. I don't fully remember what that story was.
I don't remember if we ever hear that like they've broken up or anything. But there's the part where Evan, the Canon's producing partner, does tell the studio executive like, you have this wife that you don't deserve, kind of thing. And Canon's like, ooh, low blow, man. And I was like, yes, they have like this great chemistry. He was smitten with her from the beginning. Obviously, she's still currently married. So I'm like, I am waiting for the announcement that they've broken up and that she is free for Evan to pursue.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be a really good one too. And I know she's working on something else, but I think that's going to be through like regular publishers, not going to be indie.
I was surprised that we don't actually like finish the film during this book. Like I thought, oh, okay, like we'll get back to filming, or like there'll be some sort of epilogue where like the movie's over. But I guess it makes sense too, though, that we have this team of people. We have Verity and Monk, who have another romance coming. We have hopefully Evan and Lynn, I hope so, which would be another romance. So it does make sense to, I guess, spread the same film out amongst these 2 or 3 books. But I definitely didn't expect that when I started it. I thought this would be like, we have a concrete finish to the movie with the book ending, but really we just end with we end with Neevah getting her new kidney, and that, you know, now she's okay and she and Canon are going to be together. Although there's still acknowledgement that, you know, she's still going to be living with this disease. Like she's chronically ill, like, but she's good for now. Like this is a step in the right direction. So yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise ending for me, because they got their happy ending, but it's also like a to be continued at the same time. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
For whatever reason, I thought that they did release the documentary. Or maybe he just showed it to her.
He shows it to her. Yeah,
okay.
He shows her and is like, hey, I have this idea to do a documentary about like your struggle with lupus and like finding a new kidney, and we'll take it to like Cannes Film Festival, and then we'll release the Desi Blue movie like the same year. And I was like, wow, this is a very ambitious timeline, sir. So
well, and with Desi Blue, I think because they were only like, when she got sick, I thought that they weren't missing too much, like there was only, so yeah. I wonder how much of that is going to like be part of book 2 and book 3, because I couldn't see. I guess I could see like maybe book 2 going back in time to tell us like what their big.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah,
it's sort of like
maybe like a back and forth.
Yeah, and like maybe even I like sometimes when like we see this book from Canon and Neevah's perspectives. Maybe with Monk and Verity's book, it would start somewhere in the timeline of where Real takes place, but we're seeing it from Monk and Verity's perspective. So like maybe we're still seeing Neevah go through this journey, but we're seeing what's going on with the other characters at the same time. Because that's the other thing is like once we focus on Neevah's illness, they get off the set very quickly. Like it becomes very much about saving her life as opposed to finishing the movie. So yeah, I don't know. I know that I'm going to read it regardless of when it takes place or what's going on, but I am going to read the shit out of it.
Yeah, I think also like Kennedy does a great job in talking about just different, like for example, Real was like lupus, right? And, and that was like the big focus on it. So I would love to know what book 2 and book 3, like what those topics will be that she'll focus on, because she does amazing research when she talks about topics like this. It's like she does so much research, and she has like so many interviews to make sure that she's getting it right. And that's what I love about her, that she brings topics to the forefront that challenges us and the way we think and the way that we see people, or just the way that we see certain situations. Like with her Hoop series, like there's so many different things that she touches on that really challenges the way that you see a specific situation or thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've never been disappointed by a Kennedy Ryan book. And I think it's for exactly the same reason you're saying, is that she just does this deep dive, and I like being challenged. I like people like playing with the, you know, what we've come to know as like the typical or normal tropes, or, you know, versions of what certain character types look like. And so I love that she does that. And you can tell this is like research. Like it there's so much thought put into each of the characters and like the places they go and just being on set. And I love when side characters have their own purpose. Like they're not just there to like further the development of like the central romance. Like they have their own purpose, they have their own point of view, and I love that. And that's what makes me want to read the next book in the series. Is I'm like, wow, I really like Monk and Verity like on their own in this book. Like they're such a small role, but I still find myself attached to them to the point where I want to know what their love story is like, you know, and that's hard to do. And so mission accomplished, Miss Ryan.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I will say, I think this was a great book to include in the Steam box because it is hot.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's like what gets me about Kennedy is that she's like lyrical, poetic with her steam. Like,
yes,
like the scenes are so beautiful, and they're also such an important part of the plot. Like it's not just to like hit the steam checkbox. Like there's they play a very important role in all her books. I think in one of my reviews I wrote, like, I don't know how I can be like turned on and also like an emotional wreck while reading a Steamy scene, because she just does them so well.
It's true. It's absolutely. Do you have a favorite? On this show, we call them sexcerpts. Do you have a favorite sexcerpt that you wanted to either share and or discuss?
Oh God. No, not specifically all of them.
They're all great. I mean, and like I said, I think my favorite is that, first of all, it takes a while to get to the sex. Like, and this is a slow burn where she really earns that burn. Like, it is, you are just dying right along with the characters because you know that they want to rip each other's clothes off. They know that they want to rip each other's clothes off. And you know it's just a matter of time before it happens. But I love that. And then I also love later in the book when Neevah is dealing with her illness and it's getting worse and worse and worse, that he always is, I don't want to, he always sees her as a beautiful, you know, sexual, like he's attracted to her from like start to finish. And so I do love that they have sex when she's feeling like very uncomfortable in her body and like how she looks, but he's constantly reaffirming her and telling her that she's beautiful and he loves her and all this stuff. So I love that. I will say the scene that I highlighted to share a piece from is when they have sex on the rooftop of that hotel. It's like a rooftop,
my God, yes, yes,
like garden restaurant, and they have the place to themselves because of course Canon knows a person,
right?
And I'm just like, oh, we gonna do this. We gonna do this right here in this you know, little cabana on top of this hotel, and it's a good one. He like turns her around and
that was I think that's definitely one of my highlights. I have it in one of my like I have like these different like categories of romance, like sex scenes, and this is like one of my like sex in a public place, because it was definitely super fucking hot.
What are some of your other highlights? I'm curious, like how do you organize your favorite sex scenes?
I just kind of write them down on my notepad, like as I'm reading them. I don't necessarily highlight by favorite, but I'll do it by like categories. So like sex outside, or like sex in the office, or like mind blowing like blowjobs, or like sex at parents' house. I have different ones, and I'm still building it because like I don't always like, especially if I get so into a book, I don't like. I just space out, and then
that's
like
me too.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get better, especially because like for this one I read an arc of it, so I had it on my tablet, so like all my highlights are on there. So I think like now I need to transfer those highlights to my actual physical copy. But I'm trying to be better about like keeping track of different things, because I feel like I never do. It's just like when a book is so good, I just can't even keep reading.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I follow several Instagram accounts of book bloggers who give these fantastic listicles of like, ooh, you know, stories where it's like sex in the office, or like hookups during the holidays. And it's great. I love them. I love them because it steers me towards what I want to read next. But I'm like, man, I wish I could do one of those. And I never can, because I just get so caught up in the book itself that I don't remember which one has which. There's so many books that have so many great scenes.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely hard to keep track of. I think talk about soon, Amanda. Like she's so good at
that. I love her
putting her list together. Like she is fantastic. And I just don't know how she has the capacity to like remember all of that. I cannot. I just can't.
Well, she's going to be a guest on Boobies and Noobies, so I will ask her where she finds the capacity.
Please. I need to listen to that, because she is just phenomenal. Yeah, this book, I think that the sex scenes were just so passionate, and there was so much tension leading up to it, because they were both trying to like separate career from relationship, and I think it did an awesome job in highlighting how like Canon as a man is able to have relationships with whoever and no one's going to say anything about it, but
Yes.
Neevah as a woman cannot have those relationships because it will be said that this is how her career got started, like she got her jump start because she was fucking
slept
clever
with the director,
right?
Yep.
And so like it's such a complicated dynamic, and I think Kennedy did a wonderful job in like how she navigated it. But I mean, even in sport, like I work in sports on my like 9 to 5 job, and also a career that's very male dominated, right? And so like a lot of that touched my heart in that like 100%, like you don't want to be seen as the girl who comes up because like of a favor, or you're like the favorite, or like whatever, right? Like you had a relationship with whoever, and it was so hard because you wanted to tell her like, Neevah, fuck it, like do what makes you happy, like these people don't matter, but also like she cares about her career so much, and she has dedicated so much time and effort, dedication, like this was her dream. And so like it was so, there were just so many emotions because you wanted them to just say fuck it, but you also knew the stigma that would come from that.
There's a lot of like subtle commentary on several stigmas that exist within the world of Hollywood, especially related to gender. Like one of my favorite lines, and it's only one line that Kennedy says, and I don't have the exact quote, but it's when we first meet the female cinematographer, and Canon, it's from Canon's perspective, and he says something like, and she's one of the most talented cinematographers I've ever worked with, and I know that she would have an Oscar by now if she was a man. And I was like, yep, I'm glad somebody said it, because that was my first thought, was female cinematographer. What? We never hear about female cinematographers. Like, and it's true. I mean, there's just so many. And again, this is not, specific to just Hollywood. We know that. But I think because so many of us watch movies and TV and enjoy reality television and read Us Weekly, it's so much a part of our lives that we all feel like in some way tangential to Hollywood. Like we have this connection to what's going on. Like, oh, I know about the behind the scenes rumors about this. Like, you weren't there. You don't know. Like, nobody knows except for the people involved. So it hit me on a lot of levels too. I'm with you. Especially when it did come to like some of the gender inequalities within Hollywood, which are a lot. So let me give everyone a little sneak peek at one of the sex scenes. This is when they are on the rooftop of the hotel. I'll just read a small bit of this, but you can see how beautiful Kennedy's writing is. I hope I never get over how perfect he feels inside me, like I was molded to his specifications, shaped for his dimensions. I moan and reach my hand back to pull at one of my cheeks, widening the way for his cock. It feels like he goes where no dick has gone before. Deeper, better. I also love that, like, I chuckled a lot while reading this book. Like, I love that she can make me laugh, but also cry, like, in the same scene. Somehow I feel each thrust in my heart. His every touch plays on my emotions and tears sting my eyes. His hand tightens at my hip and he slides the other hand up my arm, finds my hand on the couch and laces our fingers together. He sets a frenetic pace that sends the blood singing through my body again. The cushions absorbs my scream as I come, and I punish the soft cotton with clawing nails. With his voice strangled, his fingers fisted in my hair, he comes to.
Yeah. How does she make me so like swoony and mopey and like horny at the same time? I don't get it. Like, I don't get it.
And you know what? I've had this conversation before with the hosts of Buzzing About Romance. They had asked me, like, do you usually get horny when you read a romance novel? And I said, you know what, at this point, no, because like I feel like it's so much related to like work that I don't think about it in that way. So I know that when one does make me feel horny, that I'm like, ooh, this is a really good one. This is a really hot one. And that's how I felt while reading Real, is I was like, this is so well written. This is such a great story. These characters are like so relatable. And also, it's hot. So that's me. That's me on Reel. Any other notes before we dive in to give this book a few ratings?
If you
Give it an
haven't picked it
Oscar.
up, yeah, if you haven't picked it up, you absolutely must. If
Yes.
we haven't convinced you yet, like the banter, the steam, you said it correctly. Like the way she's able to make you laugh, because her banter, even like the inner dialogue with the characters are always just fabulous.
It's hilarious. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, as much as this book touches on chronic illness and, you know, inequality in the workplace, I mean, like there is so much to laugh at. There are so many highlights that I have of just like funny one-liners. Like it is very funny. So
Yeah.
emotions all around.
Oh, there's one line that I have highlighted that says, "I'm so deep in this dick drought, I'm past the point of thirst."
Yes. Oh my God. That was one of the ones I love too.
Oh my God. She's just so funny. So funny.
Good. It's so good. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love it. And yeah, like I said, if our conversation praising this book doesn't do it for you, I don't know what will. I don't know what else to do to convince you. Like I already have the minute I finished this, I messaged one of my very best friends and was like, "Hey, found a book I know you'll love. Send me your address. I'm mailing it to you tomorrow."
I love that.
So yeah, so I'm going to share my copy tomorrow when I send it off to my friend in Chicago. It's like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, but with Kennedy Ryan's books.
Yeah.
All right, Mel. Well, we are going to give this book a few grades. And on Boobies and Noobies, we grade for heart, humor, and heat on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be. And we will start with heart. What do you think?
100. 10 plus.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, it's for me, I'm just going to go ahead and say that I don't think the humor will be at a full 10 for me, but as far as like heart goes, it is beyond a 10. Like it is well beyond a 10. And heat, that's a tough one too. I might even give it a 10 for that as well. I'm not sure. Let me think about it. But heart is a 10 for me too. So I'll pass it over to you for humor.
I think heat is one. Oh, humor. Sorry. Humor, I would probably go for like a 6 or 7. Just because, I mean, this is not a rom-com, right?
Right.
So, but the bits that you do get of like little flashes of like Neevah's personality and like her conversations with like her friend who's also the hairstylist, and like even her banter with Canon, like there's little bits and pieces that will make you crack up, and it just feels so natural. So it's not a rom-com, so I don't think like you can fairly rate it on like humor, but it definitely has places that will make you chuckle. So like I would say like a 6, 7.
Yeah, I definitely laughed out loud a few times. So I'm gonna give it a 7. I'm gonna give it a 7 because I will say even books that I think have been marketed more as like romantic comedies, I've found less comedic than I found parts of this book. Like I think it just added so much personality to the characters when they had these like micro moments of comedy. Like it was very cute. So I'm gonna give it a 7. How about heat? What do you think?
So
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Okay, so definitely. Okay, so it's steamy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the steamiest, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like a Katie Robert book.
Okay, I was gonna say, do you have a measure for like your steam? Like, do you have somebody that's like your ultimate steam rating? And Katie Robert has been a popular measurement on this show for sure.
Oh, Katie Robert, she is. My God, you need to have 2 vibrators charged for that one. But I almost want to say a 10 because her steam is so passionate that I feel like it takes the steam to another level. Like it's not just a steamy sex scene. It's sexy and steamy and passionate and so raw and that's with all her books. Like I think a 10.
I totally get what you're saying too, is like if you think about steam as being specifically just like how naughty can this book get? How raunchy can it get? How many dicks are going into how many holes? Like that's one version of steam. Like this version of heat is that there's so much passion and emotion and feelings attached to every time they have sex, and it all is purposeful. It's not like there's a lack. It's not like there's too much. Like, it all is so well placed and so well timed that it's I want to give it a 10. Like, the only reason I'm like hesitating is because I keep thinking about like Nikki Sloan and Katie Robert, who are like my usual heat barometer. And I mean, honestly, they're like a 15 on the scale of 10. So if they're the 15, I guess Real would be the 10. Just because this is the sex I want to read. This is the sex that I'm like, this is hot, but also intimate and passionate. Like, there's so much there. And I guess if it does make me feel a little bit horny while reading it, mission accomplished. Like, well done.
And I know some people who also like rate their steam based on like the sexual tension, and I think that also like even ups it more for me, because there's so much sexual tension leading up to them actually having sex that like that alone will drive you crazy.
It's true. But then it's worth it. It's so worth the wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, you know, once again, like we said, if this isn't enough to get you to read it, I don't know what is. But this is almost one of those books that I want to like sit down and read again, like having just finished it. Like, it doesn't matter, you know? And if that's not the mark of a good book, oh boy, I don't know what everybody else's rankings are. So, but that's Real for you, Real by Kennedy Ryan, which is available now. And hopefully we will have that second book soon. I know that the novella she has coming out in September. I don't know who that's about or like how it relates.
So I was just looking on Goodreads, and it looks like it's actually coming out in May now.
Oh, May of 2022?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's inconvenient for me.
Yeah. Because I thought it was supposed to be released this year.
Yeah.
But now it has a May 2022.
Okay.
The other thing I'll say is that I've heard that the audio is fantastic on this. Like, it is stunning. So I'm meaning to do like a reread, like immersively with the audio.
That'd be
like
cool.
Do both together, because I think that's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not a huge audiobook listener, but I think if you have the right narrators and they just, you know, fit the vibe and the characters, like you can fall in love with anything. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll check that out too. Maybe that's what I'll do too, instead of rereading it. Especially since I'm going to share my copy with a friend anyway. I'm just going to have to listen to it, I guess.
Yeah, and I've heard it has like music. Like, I think there's like a specific soundtrack that was made for this that you like get at the end. Yeah, so I've heard that the audiobook is very, very special. So
well, I'm excited for whenever the next book comes. I will absolutely read it. And until then, you know, everybody check out the Steam box, and you can gather up some more steamy literature to read this fall and winter. You know where to check it out. I've also got a link on the Boobies and Noobies Instagram and Twitter. So check it out. And Mel, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
And thanks for choosing this book for the box. I mean, do you, you know, keep in mind that this episode's coming out in September. Do you have an idea of when you'll be announcing the books for the fall box?
Yeah, so by the time this comes out, I'll already have that, so I can tell you. So for fall, we have A Lot Like Adios by Alexis Daria. We have Acting on Impulse by Mia Sosa, and we have Remission by Ofelia Martinez, which, if you like Grey's Anatomy, you will absolutely love this. It is a hospital romance, and like the whole series kind of like we'll talk about different people that you meet in this first book. It is fantastic. It was so good, and I think this was her debut novel, and she's an indie author, so I'm really excited to show those. And then there's also I'm adding this like as an extra because it's like a poem book, but it's called Mujer de Colores, which is, well, you can see it, but it's by Alegría Publishing, and so we're also going to include that. It's like a poetic experience that just talks about like your divinity, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So
I love
those
that.
Will be the 4.
That's exciting. Well, and Acting on Impulse by Mia Sosa, I know you mentioned, that was actually one that I had considered for our Hot for Hollywood series because
nice.
the hero in
that
it
makes sense.
Is a Hollywood heartthrob. So that was one I had thought about. So there you go. It's like the perfect timing. Like it's meant to be that, you know, that one's included, and I didn't get it into this series, but doesn't matter because now I get to read and talk about it for Steambox anyway.
And Mia Sosa also, I will say, I love the dialogue that she writes for her characters too. Like that's another one that like will have me like laughing out loud because like I just can relate so much with like the way that her characters like talk to themselves. Like I really enjoyed that one.
I love dialogue. I mean, my background's in like script writing, so it's like dialogue is like what calls out to me. Like I love writing dialogue, I love reading dialogue. So yeah, I'm excited. That sounds like a fun lineup of books. And so at this point in time, there you go. There's your fall Steam box. Everybody go grab your box while you can, and happy reading.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Noobies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Noobies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.